Hey, look where we are. We're back in Wetzlar, Germany. We are at Lights Park. We're here for a very special celebration. It is the 100-year anniversary of the M system. And in honor of that, I have a lens specifically for M mount that I'm excited to play with while I'm here. This is the new Light Lens Lab 50mm Z21, which is based off of a 1950s/60s Pierre Angenieux S21 50mm f1.5. This lens promises to have a lot of character. I'm excited to play with it here. I've got it on an M6 because I figure the best way to test a lens designed for that vintage look is to shoot it on film. I'm Niccolls. This is PetaPixel. Let's go have a journey. Now, in order to meet our deadlines, we have to get this film developed quick, but luckily we had a local developer that could do this for us. So first off, huge thanks to Flick Film. They're located in the lovely town of Longview, just south of Calgary, and they did a rush development job and scan for us, and it wouldn't be possible without their help. Now, I've tested Light Lens Lab lenses before, and I really like what the company's trying to do, and they're trying to recreate the look and character and classic aesthetic of vintage glass. And this is glass that's very difficult to get nowadays. If you were to find a Pierre Angenieux lens, an S21 50mm 1.5, you're gonna be paying like $15,000. I mean, just crazy stuff. Now, what they're doing here is trying to give you the exact same look, but with some modern design changes. This captures a lot of the aesthetic look, but it's not an exact replica of the S21 lens, but optically it is trying to be. It is still using, though, modern glass in this particular lens, and they've even updated things like the actual rangefinder mount to make it a little bit more accurate with modern cameras. Now, the original lens was made for photographic pursuits. It was out in M42 screw mount. This is, of course, made for M mount, so there's some modernization there. But the characteristic of the original Angenieux lens was to have a very distinct, fairly sharp-looking center to the image, and then a lot of fall off to the corners. And so we're going to take a look and see if this replicates that. But before we do that, let's get into the handling. So on the Z21 that I have here, you absolutely notice the stark contrast between the black paint and then just the clean chrome rings. It certainly attracts attention from a distance. And I would say it does look vintage, but it's not quite the same as the original Angenieux. They're not really going to mimic the exact aesthetic design of the exterior of the lens. But it's a nice compact lens, 52mm filter thread here on the front. The rings are cut nicely. The aperture is indexed, though, differently. So as you get to the tighter apertures like 11, 16, 22, they're very close together, the click stops. And then as you get to the wider apertures, they open up more. You just have more distance in between each setting. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but it works. Manual focus ring, not bad, although it does feel maybe like a little bit looser than I would like on this particular one, but it certainly is a nice smooth helicoid, and that's it. Now, this lens is made out of aluminum, unlike some of the other ones where they make it out of brass. This is an aluminum construction, which makes the lens quite a bit lighter, only 313 grams, so it doesn't weigh much on the camera at all. So let's talk about the bokeh on this lens because it is distinct. And I mean, you know, this is not going for like a modern, clean, well-corrected look, not at all. If you like the word character, whether you think that's a good thing or bad thing, this lens has a ton of it. Look at the specular highlights, you can see I wouldn't even call this a soap bubble effect. It looks like somebody drew an outline around each highlight. I mean, it is stark. It really creates a very busy, distracting looking background, but it really does draw the eye, good or bad. Also, you've got to stop the lens way down to get rid of the cat's eye effect, so you get a very old school swirly kind of effect, and it can be quite beautiful. So the thing I would say here is it's a 10-bladed aperture, fairly round, but when you stop down, you'll still see a bit of a polygonal effect, but it does deliver beautiful sun stars. Okay, let's talk about sharpness on this lens because, again, this is a strange one. So This design, like the original S21 lenses, it was never about getting sharpness across the whole frame. There's tons of field curvature in this lens, which means if the center's in focus, the corners are way out. I mean, let's take a look at our charts here to see. So looking at the center here, shooting wide open at f1.5, you can see that the middle of the image actually has some detail. Not a lot of contrast though. There's an overall dreamy kind of look to it. But when you stop the lens down a couple stops, it actually crisps up really nicely. You can see good contrast, good detail. So this lens can kind of be 2-in-1. Wide open, it's dreamy and soft focus, and then stop down, it's actually quite crisp. But keep in mind, that's just the central part of the image. As you start to go to the corners here, even focusing specifically in the corner, at 1.5, it is still soft, like just blurry. And stopping the lens down, it doesn't help much. So when you compose with this lens, you gotta be really careful of where you place your subjects. It's really intended to have them more in the center. And especially if you're using a rangefinder where you're focusing the center and then recomposing, be careful with that, because the field curvature and the fact that things get soft real quick towards the corners means you might get a shot out of focus. But if you learn where that transition is, you can actually have a lot of fun with it. So what about LoCA on this? And again, that's that longitudinal chromatic aberration, you know, out of focus areas, foreground and background. You get weird color fringing, and it's really hard to get rid of in post and you don't want it. Well, I assume that because this was an old lens design and they're not doing a lot of corrections on purpose to mimic that aesthetic, that it would have bad LoCA, but actually it wasn't as bad as I thought. You can see there's a little bit here, a little bit of a color shift, but really it's far less than I expected. Okay, so let's talk about flare now on this Z21 lens. So I was expecting to see a lot of it, but I guess they're using modern coatings here because it's actually controlling it really well. You'll notice wide open, we're not losing a lot of contrast. Everything still looks nice and vivid. Didn't see a lot of flare, and when stopping down, the ghosting is really very minimal. So this lens is actually really well protected in bright conditions. So this is an interesting lens. I've had a fun time playing with it, and it's doing something a little bit different than the other light lens lab glass that I've played with, in that this is trying to give you that classic look, but there are some modernizations here to this lens. They're not really trying to build it exactly the same way as the original S21 series lens. The other thing I think is going to be quite polarizing about this is just the overall look of it. The fact that you get those really soft corners, the fact that you get, you know, that dreamy look when you're shooting wide open. It's all going to come down to whether you enjoy that aesthetic or not. But the beautiful thing here about this lens, even though it is aluminum construction, even though it's a little bit lighter and it doesn't quite have the same look as the original lens as far as the overall design on the outside, it gives you the same character for way less money. You're looking at $1,000 roughly to get this lens. So if you're looking for that classic kind of look, you're okay with those soft corners, and you really want that swirly bokeh, this is a great option. But whether you're shooting analog or digital, I just think it's so much fun to have the option to get the kind of character and look that a lot of this vintage glass would give you in a way that's far more accessible. I hope you guys enjoyed this review and this little look at this Z21 series lens. We love hearing the feedback on what you think about the lenses that we test, and we definitely talk about that on the PetaPixel podcast. So do check that out. It's on this exact same channel, or just all your favorite podcasting apps. You can listen to us while you're doing the dishes or laundry or driving your car or whatever else you want to do there. Even taking photos with earbuds in your ear. That'd be a new one. And hey, you should check out our merch store. While you're in there, you can get a 25% discount on anything in there if you have a PetaPixel.com membership. $3 a month, $30 a year. It'll pay for itself real quick. And then you can also download the RAWs and JPEGs from lens reviews, just like this one, and then you can evaluate for yourself if it's right for you. But thanks for watching. We really appreciate it and all the support. We'll see you soon with more on PetaPixel.